Good morning, thank you for your time this morning. I just wanted to go through a couple of key phrases and the run sheet for your upcoming auction. The first is the run sheet. So come auction day, this is the run sheet for the actual day. The agent team will arrive between 15 minutes to half an hour before your scheduled open house time. The agent will set up as per auction day with a registration table, legalities and normal open house procedure during that time. The half an hour before your auction is the time where agents will obviously show the home and then they will register the interested parties for the actual auction. It's important to note that only registered bidders may participate during your auction. Bidders can register during the actual auction process, that's perfectly fine and perfectly legal. But during your actual auction, it is only the people that have registered that may place a bid. We are going to have a meeting 5 minutes before the auction will commence, either at the neighbour's house or down the road, just so we can speak privately. The key to this meeting is that we will know the exact number of registered bidders that are registered for your auction. That is really important information to have because we have a different strategy, whether it be 1 or 2 registered bidders, or we have 8 to 10 or 10 plus. Very different styles of auction. The 1 to 2 registered bidders is about vendor bids and about strategy, and that's going to be a hard, possibly a slow, grinding auction. Whereas the auction that might have multiple registered bidders is about momentum and speed and energy. It's also in this 5-minute meeting, we've got more time than what you think, but in this 5-minute meeting we'll confirm the instructions from you, which is going to be confirmation of the reserve price, and if we need to make any changes to the reserve price, subject to the information that we now have with the amount of registered bidders that we have, and I'll talk about that more this week with you. And the last part of that meeting is obviously to meet the auctioneer and ask any questions that you might have on the day. Following that, we will escort you largely into the property and you will have your privacy, whether that's inside the property and the auction is outside, or whether the weather is not so good and the auction is inside and you'll have your own privacy being in a room inside the property. It's important that during the auction that the buyers can't see you. I don't want buyers to either see your expression, it's going very well or it's not going well and very slowly, but we just want you to have your privacy, but I want you to hear everything that's going on during the actual auction itself. During the auction, there's only 2 things that can happen. The property will either sell or it will pass in. If the property sells, it's an unconditional sale. The buyer is essentially locked in and the property is sold. The buyer will then sign the contract, pay the deposit, and it's an unconditional sale. It means the property is sold as is. If the property is passed in, it's important to note that we have what's called auction conditions. What does that mean? We have auction conditions until midnight, the night of auction. So we can still negotiate and sell your property up to 11:59 that evening, and the property is sold again unconditionally and as is. I also want to go through a couple of key phrases for you. So this week we'll send you a blank copy of the reserve letter. The reserve letter has 3 numbers on that particular form. The first number is the official reserve price. That is the number of which, if the property hits that price or exceeds it, the property will sell. The second number which you will see is the adjusted reserve price. The reserve price can be moved at any time during the auction, as many times as needed to facilitate a sale. All that needs is the number goes into that particular form. It's signed off by you during the auction, but it is left blank at the start of the auction because it's a fluid number. We don't know where that property will go in terms of the bidding or where that number may indeed be. The third number on that reserve form is called the vendor bid, which I'll go through with you now. The vendor bid, in terms of definition, is a bid on behalf of you, the seller, that is made and declared during the auction process. I use the vendor bid in a number of different ways. The first way to use the vendor bid is essentially not at all. It means the bidding will start at a level and organically will go up, hopefully exceed your reserve price, and the property sells. The second way I use the vendor bid is to start the auction, which we would do on one particular scenario, which I will walk you through this week. The third way in which I'd use the vendor bid is if we have to, the further the bidding on it stop beneath the reserve price, we then use a vendor bid to get it closer to your reserve price and encourage the bidders to extend from that level upwards. We cannot sell the property back to you on a vendor bid. So if a buyer makes a bid over the top of the vendor bid, that is a legal bid, and that becomes essentially your worst case scenario. You have the option to lock that buyer in. It's a very, very powerful scenario, and that's a good use of the vendor bid. The last term I want to go through with you is the term what's called on the market. On the market is a term that is used when a property is actually on the market for sale. It means that it has essentially hit your reserve price or exceeded it, or the reserve price has been adjusted and the bidding has exceeded that adjusted number. You cannot use the term on the market unless the home is essentially on the market. That is a very powerful time in an auction. If the property is declared on the market, it is a message to the buyer that the property is going to be sold today. What that can do is spur the bidding on further when the buyers know they are essentially playing for keeps. The benefit of auction for you at this point in time is the buyer is locked in legally. It's a very powerful platform, and it's a platform that essentially the seller has almost complete control over if the bidders do actually bid. As I will go through with you this week, you will have an option to sell. I often say it can be a very easy decision to sell if the property is going well and you get natural momentum at auction, or it can be a really hard decision to sell. And I don't say that lightly. We deal with a lot of money in our industry, and a home is a very, very emotional sale and purchase. I can assure you that our team will do everything in their power to maximize your selling price this week. If you have any questions, we'll conduct a formal reserve meeting with you this week to go through what we've just gone through around the reserve, vendor bids, on the market, and the run sheet for auction, and run you through the different scenarios that can happen at auction so you are fully prepared for your auction this week. I wish you all the best this week. Our team will be working incredibly hard to make this a successful one for you.